Hello and welcome to the JekyllHydeClub. Today we have a review of the Hasbro action figure Wrath Amon from Conan the Adventurer series. This figure is well made. It has 5 points of articulation. The head does not turn at all, but even when I'm trying to turn the head, you can see that it turns at the waist, which is one of the points of articulation. Then the arms, it's one of them is raised, it goes up and down, either arm moves like that. This one is harder and this one is easier to move, for me at least. And then the same with the legs, they move up and down, those are both equal. So those are the only things that actually move, the waist, the 2 arms and the 2 legs. I like the way he is made here, really nicely developed. I also added some pictures to show you comparison of the cartoon Conan the Adventurer and the figure itself, how they show side by side. And I will show you in a second. So he is based, of course, on the famous series Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard. In the book series, the character was known as Thoth Amon instead of Wrath Amon. Sometimes because of that, I even pronounce it the wrong way and call it Wrath Amon, like as if I'm combining the 2 of them. So the Thoth Amon was a very powerful wizard of the Stygian lands, which in Howard was bordering somewhere in Egypt. The word Stygian itself is very interesting for me. It derives from the river Styx, so it means something like infernal or dark. So Thoth Amon was always an interesting wizard for me. This is not, of course, the way he is portrayed. Originally, he is portrayed as a dark-skinned one, the way you would expect maybe Egyptians, with some lighter tones. He was best depicted in Conan the Barbarian as the character Thoth Amon. It is an entirely different character actually, but people think he is the archetype of all the Howardian wizards. But he was actually from an even earlier story about Kol the Destroyer that preceded Conan. So anyway, that was Thoth Amon in the books. There he was worshipping this serpentine entity, kind of like his friend Lovecraft. Howard combined several different gods into a single godlike entity. In this variation, he called the serpent god Father Set, but it was not the Egyptian god Set, and it was more based maybe on the god Ygg from the Lovecraftian pantheon, people think. So because of that, we see Wrath Amon in Conan the Adventurer series represented as partly serpentine. They gave him a very interesting origin story there in that animated series from the 90s, where he was originally, interestingly enough, a lizard of all things and not a serpent at all, until he was transformed into a serpent by his predecessor Ram Amon, who was the leader of the Serpent Men. So it's kind of interesting to me. They had a really good concept because that particular type of lizard, I always thought it was the Gila monster, but turns out you have to pronounce it Hilo monster. So it's a venomous lizard, and it is passive. Its venom is more passive, so it doesn't detect the way snakes do, and it has smaller prey usually because of that. Where snakes can use the poison to defend themselves, lizards are more passive and only eat something that's already weaker than them, and they can easily subdue it anyway. So it's kind of interesting that they chose that kind of a lizard who is already passive to be the slave of Ram Amon. And because of that, when you think about it, it's kind of psychologically sound that this person would be overcompensating, trying to prove to everybody that he is more serpent than any of the serpents. Kind of reminds me of Voldemort from Potter, where he has to compensate and like hate all of his kind type of thing. So because of that, you see here on his figure, I'm guessing that could be the reason, where he is all covered in snake features that don't really, they represent the cult, but not himself as an individual. So we have the snake fangs over here, the snake eyes on his chest. I'm wondering if this little pendant that's red, it matches the color of his horns, but I had this idea that maybe it could be representing the heart of Ahriman that Thoth Amon was trying to recover in the original Robert E. Howard story, The Hour of the Dragon, or The Phoenix on the Sword, for example, the two stories where he actually shows up. So that's just my idea. I don't know if it's true or not, but I like the concept. And I like how his metallic armor here is decorated with different sigils. He's described as an evil wizard, Wrath Amon is, and it makes sense that he would have mystical sigils. One of them seems to be like a half moon, and there are some others that maybe he uses for sorcery. So I like how he's done. The green seems to be authentic. It represents authentically how he was portrayed also in the animated series Conan the Adventurer, and for that reason I really enjoy playing with that toy. It brings to mind that atmosphere of the 90s of the serpent people developed by Lovecraft and by Howard. They were both of the same circle and contributed to the Cthulhu mythos. So anyway, I had other reviews about that, so I will stop this review with the last close-up of Wrath Amon for your benefit, and hope you enjoyed this review. And join us for more toys, spooky, horror, mythology, and other kinds of reviews in the future. We are the JekyllHydeClub. Become a member by subscribing.